Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Last Best Hope for Conversation, your Babylon 5 podcast. We are getting toward the end. We will talk a little bit at the end about some plans we have going forward, but today we are talking Objects in Motion, the 20th episode of season 5, and the next to last one episode that was actually recorded for season 5. Originally aired November 11th, 1998. And I thought this was a good one. And Lou, a lot of Garibaldi. So what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought another solid episode. I was very happy with how it played out.
All right. And Karen?
Same.
Good. All right. I was telling the guys that I am having to record in a different area, so I don't have my normal notes around. So let's start out with, we learn number one's real name, and Franklin just happens to be when she's coming, and he looks to be, she is arriving at the station. Want to be careful how I use the word coming, because that will be later in the episode.
That's right.
Okay. Now we got an explicit tag.
We didn't.
Yes. Karen, were you happy to see her again?
Yes, I like her character very much, Tessa.
Yeah.
I thought she was fantastic in this episode, and it tied up some stuff. I liked that she got her due after all the things that she went through, trying to lead the resistance and all of that. I thought it was very good.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm glad we got a name. How about you, Lou? Any thoughts on the return of our Mars resistance fighter?
Yeah, it was a nice surprise to see her.
Oh, nice.
Also,
Could be.
her official title, number one, is maybe a shout out to number one from the original Star Trek. Who knows?
Yes.
But yeah, she's good, and I think that her and Franklin have good chemistry together too.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Sheridan teases that he may have another idea. We find out that she's replacing Michael's role, and that way she can, and that helped Mars to have a little more oomph in the
Autonomy.
alliance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought the dinner between her and Franklin, they're talking about what ifs and bad timing, was really nice. My thought would be, I'm going to guess in my mind canon that Franklin called out sick for that shift. That he said, hey, I've given my 6 months notice. I'm not going in today. Yeah, I think that if we knew the season, we were going to get another season or something else, I would definitely be shipping these two. And any thoughts on that, Karen? Lou mentioned the great chemistry. How about you?
I think they have fantastic chemistry. The scene where they were discussing where their relationship was headed moving forward, I thought was perfect. It was very rom-com-y, and
Yeah.
I appreciated it.
Yeah, and I really like when she says, you go ahead. I like the lights. And then she's check, which is funny because usually often the cliche would be the guy going, check. So I really love that. All right, Michael is going through detox. I think that was not good to see, but I thought it was realistic to show how bad how much he had been drinking. So I thought I loved seeing Elise just nonchalantly trying to helping it through. And I think it's a little bit of a hand wave that once he got a purpose where he heard that they were being targeted for assassination, was able to click a switch and not get sick. Lou, what are your thoughts about Garibaldi and he is gotten sober and the whole plot about killing him and Elise?
Yeah, it was interesting to see Garibaldi be rather passive through that storyline until the actual incident, which I just attributed to his withdrawal issues and that. And I've gone through the nicotine cold turkey thing, and I know how bad that is. And just recently, even more minor, but I've switched to decaffeinated coffee, and even that had some physical pains as well, like headaches for a couple of days until they get over it. I understand the withdrawal issues, but I'm glad to see that they showed it because it's a good closing to Garibaldi's arc, and he's really like in the speech that he gives at the end, the goodbye speech, like perfectly encapsulates where his head is at. And if there was ever a time for him to get his act together, this is the time.
Yeah, this is, and spoilers, when you guys had talked about in the, go ahead, Karen, give me your thoughts and then I'll summarize.
I can't identify at all. I don't have an addictive personality.
Except for World of Warcraft.
No, I quit for 2 years.
I can quit anytime I want.
Technically, I did. I went back because I want to have fun again with it.
I have a very
soda.
addictive personality.
I quit soda. I've been on painkillers for extended periods of time, and then I just stop.
Good for you.
It's very difficult for me to understand that. Like, I got frustrated with my mother-in-law because she smoked, and she died from things related to her smoking. And we kept saying, we'd rather have you hanging around longer. Yeah. And I get it, but I understand that there are definite things that stop you from quitting. And so to see him like this, I've seen it in many forms of fiction and all that. I'm not saying I think it would be easy to do, but I'm set apart from it a little bit, if that makes sense. The thing is, I don't identify with that as much as I would other storylines.
Yeah.
And it was difficult for me to watch because I don't like seeing him vulnerable. I like a very confident, cocky Garibaldi, but I think it was necessary for him to go through this in order to appreciate the things that he has. And I see how much he loves Lise in this episode and what he does for her. And I feel they showed him vomiting and all that at the beginning of the episode. And then it was gone, poof, when he had to stand up for Lise. And I feel like they were showing us that his feelings for Lise overcame all that. And I really love him coming for people at the end of the episode. When he appeared on the screen in front of the board, I'm not going to get too much into this, just my initial thoughts. I thought, oh, okay, he's definitely going to tell them they're married and that he has more rights than he did before. Yeah. That's a trope, definitely. Hey, I married her, so now you can't do anything to me.
Yeah.
And that was just fantastic. He made a lot of moves that were Garibaldi-esque in this episode. So very cool to see him back again, even if we're not seeing him back very long.
Yeah, let's keep talking about that. So they do have this, there's a plot to kill them, and Zach comes up with a plan to use them as bait. I thought that was a nice scene where Michael said, hey, Zach came up with that on his own? Yeah, you did good. Your kid did well. And it backfires, though. And we'll get to that because now then we're going to move over to G'Kar. So G'Kar is met by one of his followers, and they're not happy. They feel like G'Kar owes them something. I've sold everything I own to come follow you. Now what am I supposed to do? And G'Kar, I thought kindly, but at the same time, very firmly, the whole reason you're doing this means you're not getting what I'm talking about. So I'll stick with you, Karen. Any thoughts on G'Kar's disciple, his fan, and how that goes on, where he actually, out of anger, tries to kill G'Kar?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm the cock-a-doodie car.
Yeah.
Trinil, I guess, was his name. This actor has played a lot of characters on Babylon 5. He played actually one of the humans when they were doing the Shadow War thing. He was on one of the Earth ships, I think. but I actually recognize him from that because his face is pretty prevalent. It's pretty easy to pick him out in this makeup, even though it's Narn makeup. Wow, this is the definition of fanatic, right? And being so entitled, it's astounding to me how people feel so entitled to things that aren't theirs. And Jakar is his own person. You would think that they would be up for whatever Jakar wants because they're worshiping him, as it were. And yeah, the dude sold all this stuff to get there, but honestly, he's making money off those statues. That I feel like that's an analog for what happens with like mega churches and things like that, where they buy planes and all that, but they're poor. They have to ask for money all the time because they have to do this, and oh, we need that money. We can't, and they have a plane, and God wants me to have a private plane. So he's doing okay for himself because we see a lot of his followers holding those little statues. Jakar hates them, obviously. He rips one in half, and I think that's what kind of pushes Trinil over the edge. But yeah, it's scary to see this on a show because it does translate quite a bit to how some people act in the real world. We've had people assassinated. Just uh, John Lennon, I think, it's a pretty good analogy for this. That like Mark Chapman, is that who it was?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. He was a fan.
Yeah.
And I don't understand the motivation behind that, but he went to get his signature and then came back an hour later and killed him. I just don't get it. So it's scary to see because we know it happens in real life. Not often, but it does. And yeah, it's a lot of science fiction. Since we're getting to the end, I just want to put a little period on this. A lot of science fiction is things that we can imagine what it would be like, but we can't really identify with it. And I feel like the science fiction that hooks me the most are the stories that I can see in the real world.
Yeah.
And I feel like Babylon 5 is definitely one of those. He takes things from what's happening in society and events that have happened, and he translates them into this other world that we aren't a part of, but it holds a mirror up and we can see them in a different way, in a more impartial way. And Star Trek did that a lot. I will say, as much as I love Star Wars, it doesn't really do that as much. It's definitely like a high fantasy kind of science fiction, and I don't feel as engaged with it. This is just one of the storylines that I can attribute to that this dude just goes nutso. And that there's something to be said for people that become fanatics there. And again, that's an addiction, right? Their addiction is you can't stop yourself from doing whatever it is that you're doing.
So Lou, I'm going to get you in just a minute, but one of the things that I smiled about is there was recently a post on a John Hyatt fan page. As I mentioned, Sylvan Groth and I are doing every John Hyatt song in alphabetical order, and we discuss them and then we rate it from 1 to 5. And this guy said, I just discovered the page. I'm a big John Hyatt fan. I was excited to listen to this podcast, but the first 2 episodes, you guys gave poor ratings to songs I love. So therefore, you guys don't know what you're talking about, so I won't listen to it again. Yeah.
Just have another opinion.
And what we have said here, and we have said, hey, we're giving this a 1-star song. If this is one of your favorite songs, please email us and tell us why.
Right.
We won't argue with you. We just would love to hear why this speaks to you
Exactly.
because we would be fascinated by it. All right, Lou, how about you?
Yeah, I think the main thrust of my reaction to this was the Chapman-Lennon situation, and of course, like the as we riffed on the Stephen King, I'm your number one fan. That kind of behavior is hard to understand. The obsessive nature of that kind of fandom is it's an interesting portal into some of the darker aspects of human psychology. There's this undercurrent or need of people to tear down things that have attained a certain level of popularity, and it's a very weird human condition that Karen, I cannot wrap my head around that. I get it to a certain degree if you're a sports fan or something like that, and the team that you hate gets loses the championship or something like that. Have it to the point where you want to hurt somebody. It just doesn't make any sense to me, but that's why it's abnormal psychology. But it is fascinating to watch, like driving by a traffic accident thing. I think we're all repulsed yet fascinated by this kind of behavior at the same time. I thought Jakar was a little brusque with the person because he's been so zen with everybody else all the time. But I can understand from his point of view because it's this constant harassment. Everybody has a bad day, and I guess that was just a bad moment for him. He just wasn't going to put up with it, and him breaking that little statue gave me that sort of vibe of Jesus with the money
Yeah.
changers in the temple
Mm-hmm.
kind of vibe. So I think JMS was pulling from a lot of pop culture, social culture beats when he wrote that little arc. Um, but it works. But there's a reason why cliches become cliches is because they work and you can still execute them well. And I thought that was all done rather well. Yeah, it was a good, tight, compact subplot for the episode, and it worked well.
Yeah, I do think there is this often sense of entitlement
Yep. Which has only
and
gotten worse in this day of instant
and
access to everything.
yeah, and the idea that I whether it's music or TV shows or films, and it's perfectly healthy to say, I wish the storyline had gone this way, but that isn't the story they wanted to tell.
Yep.
And you have to respect that. Yeah,
Which I hate. I hate that we say it would have been better if he did
yeah,
this or whatever. And I think we always say it's Monday morning quarterbacking. We at least
absolutely.
give it a caveat of, yeah, we
Yeah,
know we're coming from a totally different place. And
yeah,
so, just so we know, just so
yeah.
everybody knows, we're not trying to be hypocrites.
Over
Like,
20 years later.
wrong with us analyzing it,
No,
but
no. And I do think that's said. So I think despite Jakar having a bad day, and I agree with you, Lou, that he was a little short with that. Jakar has some of my favorite lines in this episode.
Hmm.
His dialogue when he meets with Lyta and the sum of all our tears. Not
mm,
enough, the ground is barren, too much, and it wipes away. And the when he says we're gonna go, and she's I have nowhere else to go, and he says, now I know even more that this is the right thing for me to do. And he talks about the prisons and says, what walls are you going to bring with you? I thought was really powerful. Lou, let's talk about that one. And then I want to do a separate whole section on his discussion with John.
Yeah, it was beautiful, and he delivered the lines beautifully. And I really can't say much more than what you said. Like
Yeah.
I could just quote the lines. His whole outlook on situations just really makes you. I think what he really forces people to do is look outward instead of inward. I guess that's the best way to put it. So you're in this moment, and it's like Gandalf saying to Frodo, "You can't control the time given to you, but what you control is what you do with the time that is given to you." And so it's that kind of vibe,
Yeah.
right? That's the same sort of philosophy. And I just think that he's just really got his shit together.
No, I think well said. Um, yeah, he does have this. Um, and Karen, how about you?
Yeah, it makes me wonder. We haven't seen a lot of Narn. We've seen quite a few, but not like an overwhelming amount. I would like to know where he got this from. Is he a complete product of his environment? Is there any part of Narn that's like this? Because they haven't portrayed Narn to be a very spiritual race. I love that Jakar is spiritual and different from other Narn. I think they show it with how different he is from his followers, that they are, quite frankly, simpletons. uh, and I just love how very insightful Jakar is. He's Zen, yes, but I do think that a lot of the things he says are succinct and it's just his truth. So many great quotes from him in this episode. Meanwhile, consider the walls around you. In a little while, we will leave these behind. Now you will have to decide how many others you will bring with you when we leave. I've done some of my best writing in places like these, and here you cannot run from
That
yourself.
was a great line.
Yeah. We are all the sum of our tears. Too little, and the ground is not fertile, and nothing can grow there. Too much, the best of us is washed away. I loved all these little things. And again, we know it's not Jakar, it's JMS writing them. But I do love that he is the entity that becomes this Zen kind of philosophy enhanced kind of person. And some of his best stuff was in this episode, I thought. I don't know that I can find a Jakar episode I didn't like. Jakar has always been a character that I love. And this just, it's all the good parts of Jakar rolled into one. And yeah, he's short with that dude, but who can blame him? They're clamoring outside his room. They're following
Yeah.
him everywhere he goes. So he is going to be frustrated. I cannot fault him for that. So, yeah, he may have had a bad day, but honestly, I think it was just a normal day and these people were just pushing him. So I think it's even more of a tribute to how Zen he's become, that he can be this other person, that it doesn't transfer over to his interactions with, say, Lyta or John or any of this. I love that he calls him John too, and Sheridan says, I think that's the first time you call me John. And he did it so that they could have one last little tiff
I
between.
sent you guys both a link saying after you watch the episode, watch this. After Andreas died, someone made a very wonderful tribute little video of showing some of the best of Jakar.
Mm,
And it ends with him saying that. Yeah.
yeah,
And I tear up every time I hear that.
yeah.
Yeah. I believe that when we leave a place, part of it goes with us and part of us remains. Go anywhere in the station where it is quiet and just listen. After you, while you will hear the echoes of all our conversations, every thought, every word we've exchanged. Long after we are gone, our voices will linger in these walls for as long as this place remains. But I would admit that the part of me that is going will very much miss the part of you that is staying. I just tear up every time I hear that. Karen, thoughts on, you mentioned, I just think this is one of the, I think of this anytime at a funeral when I'm leaving somewhere. So thoughts on this, and then I'll get
Well,
you, Lou.
I know I've mentioned it before, but The Good Place, amazing series. And there is an
Absolutely.
analogy in the last episode that Chidi uses, and it makes me tear up all the time too, where he says that we're like water. It When it leaves, it rolls out into the ocean and it comes back, but it's in a different form. It's
Yeah.
transformed. And that really gets to me. And this was also one of those scenes where I watched it and I was like, wow, that is profound. You do leave a piece of yourself behind. It may not be a piece that you can converse with or rely on like a friend or even an enemy, but it is a piece of that person.
Yeah.
You have a piece of almost everyone you interact with within you, and you're changed by every tiny little thing that happens to you. And just summing it up in that one little paragraph, it was so profound
Yeah.
and touching.
Yeah. Lou?
Yeah, it touches into the similar moments we've had in other shows. I think of McCoy's line at the end of The Wrath of Khan. It's about Spock. He's not really gone as long as we remember him, which is basically the sentiment that Jakar is expressing. And then we've had, like, if anybody's watched Midnight Mass or listened to our podcast about that, we have the whole talk about we're all stardust. It's all coming back to that same sort of idea. And I like the line that he says that I don't have it in front of me, but I'm paraphrasing it. He's basically telling John that even though part of me will still be here with you, I will miss the part that is not here, something along those lines. So I thought that was really nice. And yeah, so just some really beautifully written lines of dialogue for by JMS in this episode. It feels like a goodbye, not just to the characters in the show, but to the fans as well. So yeah, it was really well done.
It kind of was too.
It
right?
was, yeah.
Yeah.
And we show Lyta being led by two security guards.
Yep.
She knocks out the handcuffs and makes a
Okay, so
joke about
that's the scene you were talking about, right? Out of their handcuffs and says, "Yeah, I was making you feel safe."
Yes, there is actually another one you guys mentioned that will come up in 2 episodes.
Okay,
So, yeah.
that was the scene.
Yeah. And then she looks behind and no one's there. And then when she turns around, there's Zach there.
Yeah.
You think of that scene when he was in the elevator and she was under the control of the Vorlons.
Yeah.
Right? And what could have been.
Yeah.
Is just, and there are a lot of fandom that believe Lyta was always used as a tool. And this is another example of no one is there to tell. They give this goodbye party to Michael and Garibaldi, and she gets nothing.
Handcuffs.
Yeah, and just it felt should have been there and said, I will never forget what you've done to help us, right?
Yeah.
I just find that just the right amount of sad. And Lou, what are your thoughts, Lou?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. She's been done bad the whole series. It's a good way to show that these characters are fallible and they don't have a godlike vision, so they can't see everything and react to everyone. And it's rather fitting that it's Jakar that she ends up with because he's the most empathetic and she's the most closed down character. So they like a salt and pepper combo. The only thing I was puzzled with, I always thought that offer was for her and all the other telepaths to go with Jakar. So that seemed to have changed over the course of the last few episodes. So that was interesting. So I'm wondering what there's still telepaths on Babylon 5, right? I don't think they got rid of all of them.
No, I think the idea is that Lyta is traveling with him because they need her off the station and they don't want to send her back to Earth. And as they're exploring, she's looking for a world for her telepaths.
Yeah, yeah. But I thought that she would be doing that with the other telepaths.
And with handcuffs.
So,
yeah. This brings it back to the first episode too, which I like because she and Jakar had a conversation that led to this.
The pleasure threshold
happened
in the ship.
I don't get it. I think that would have been fun, probably. But I was sad about Zach. I really was.
Yeah, I thought both of their acting, like her looking to see if anyone was there, and then Zach just couldn't. It just seems like he should have at least gone there and said, I'm sorry we never got that pizza or something, right?
Too much water under the bridge, probably.
For sure. I was wondering too about that guy climbing up the ladder by the spaceship. I think I was wondering, where's he coming from?
No.
In the hangar. I know it was a CGI character, but it was this.
Yeah.
Why is that guy climbing a ladder?
To
It
be
was
fair,
distracting too.
it was a little, I noticed him as well. I think it was them trying to show that it's busy in the hangar
Yeah.
area.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure.
As good as this episode was, the CGI was not
Yeah.
fantastic.
No.
That was so
And my only quibble with this episode is it took till this far in the series for them to tell us how those link badges stuck to people's backs of their
right.
hands.
It was kind of late to go. Yeah, I did think
Exactly.
I was like, is this kind of late to do that? Hmm.
But now
And
we know.
Yeah,
why do they have different patterns on them?
I don't know. So,
It's weird, right?
yeah. Hmm.
No worries.
Yeah,
But I finally got an answer to something.
yeah.
One of the big
So,
mysteries.
yeah, we touched on Michael calling out the board. I'd love for any thoughts on that. But Lita gets shot in accident.
The lease.
Elise
That's all
gets
right.
shot, and it's touch and go, but she wakes up, and Garibaldi says, Doc said if you'd wake up, we're in fine shape. And immediately Michael's, let's get married. Let's not wait.
Yep.
And she's get his ass in there. That
Hmm.
made me so smile. That does show that even though it felt like they were married at the end of season 4, they officially had not. As our resident romance expert,
Oh, me.
yeah, Karen,
Oh, me.
thoughts?
Yeah, there were quite a few little romantic beats in this episode,
Yeah,
and it wasn't crammed in. I liked that they were just little, the conversation they have where they both decide, hey, let's not wait. Let's do it now. Call him in. Go get him. I thought that was really sweet. And it's very much a trope as well. I keep using this word trope, but it's a trope for a reason, that a brush with death always makes you rush things along. We have to live like every day is our last. And the fact that he was sitting there watching her through the little window into the ER, which is weird, by the way.
yeah,
Franklin comes out and he says, yeah, it's touch and go, but I think she'll be okay. And it's all up to her now. And then we see him in there with her, with his head down. He's sleeping while he's holding her hand. It's just all very sweet.
yeah,
And I love that we do get that answer, because it was nebulous as to whether they were married or not, at least to
right.
me.
I agree.
Um, and as I mentioned earlier, I do think he understood that he needed to be married to her to make those moves that he did with the board.
Yeah,
He needed that authority, but he also wanted not another day to go by for them to be together.
yeah. Lou, what do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, I like that. That's board scene. And also, I guess we might as well talk about it too, is Garibaldi, after Lisa shot, going to Lita and telling and basically getting her to rape the guy's mind to find
Yep.
out who ordered the hit. Just another way of demonstrating his relentlessness and her callousness with the use of her powers. I thought that was well done. And the board, I think that they really cast the chairman quite well with a cigar.
Yeah,
He's got that piggy look about him that just makes you don't not want to like the guy, and it's nothing to the actor.
yeah,
Yeah. So I thought they did that well. Getting married thing is yeah, you can just really feel that they're really wrapping up everything.
yeah.
Though I really thought they were already married, to be honest.
So
Now,
yeah,
can I just say,
please.
and this will be, I hope, a little humorous, I found that guy to be Orwellian, and by Orwellian, Orson Welles.
Serve no wine before it's time.
That's the one I was thinking of. And there's outtakes where he just hates the people that wrote that commercial, Orson Welles,
Yeah,
Mhm.
and he swears a lot. And I felt like that was what he was channeling a little bit.
that's nice. Um, so we get Michael telling Delenn did not make it back in time to tell Jakar goodbye, but she did make it in time to tell Michael. If I had a nitpick, it's when Michael is talking to Zach and says, "I've never asked you guys for anything." Oh, hold
Yeah.
up. You've done a lot.
Yeah.
You owe these people a lot of amends, but okay, we'll go through that.
Yeah.
And to talk about how much everyone, and he goes through all the characters, and he even mentions Londo were his family. and how much he appreciates that and how sweet that was. And I love Mira when we've never walked the length of this station. It's 5 miles.
Start now. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys have both talked about Michael saying goodbye and that thoughts. Any last thoughts about that or anything else I've forgotten on the episode? And Karen.
I loved that everyone was in character in this episode. Garibaldi saying goodbye to John and Delenn was, again, very touching.
Yeah.
And him coming out the other side and being happy, I think was very cool.
Yeah.
Was sad, I thought. And through this whole episode, and I don't know what is wrong with my brain, I keep thinking, okay, they have to hug. They can't just give each other handshakes. And it was nice to see that they actually did do like that bro hug thing, John and Garibaldi. So that was cool. I don't know why my mind goes there. They need to hug. It's not just a handshake event.
Yeah.
I knew that he would hug Delenn. That was a brainer.
Yeah.
And after what we talked about last week with Mira Furlan, I was looking at her tummy to see if we could see baby bump, because as we said that, this is when Mira actually found out she was pregnant. But it was, I like how hesitant he is to leave. He's like, it'll be nice, but it'll be sad to leave this. John, I'm talking about John here.
I have a little bit of nitpick that because as a soldier, he's been transferred a lot of different places. So I think it just talks about how significant these 4 years have been in his life.
And that he's made a lot of friends. I think he felt like he was going to settle there.
Yeah.
That was going to be where he landed.
Okay.
So.
Good. Michael got
Michael.
Michael. Yeah. Okay. I think what those scenes demonstrated to me is my biggest criticism of the show is where were these scenes during the rest of the series? Like these moments of characters talking to each other about their emotional state. Those moments, like just after a crisis has been or passed, like where were those moments? When did Garibaldi come to Sheridan? And even though he was being controlled by Bester, I just wish that the show would have done that on a more consistent basis. And this episode was proof in the pudding that how powerful those moments would have been if they would have included them from the get-go.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Either one of you?
I'm good.
Okay. We have, all right. So ratings. Lou.
I'm going to give this another 8.5 snapped statues.
Oh, nice.
I'm going to give it a 9. 9 brown sectors. He felt like
he thought it was going to end up. Yeah. I'm going to say 9 poignant goodbyes. And I think this dialogue, there is so much good. And I'm sure that as an actor, both Andreas loved how much he's been able to do this and how this was such a gift to his career since he had spent so much time playing thugs.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing, Peter Jurasik as Londo, I'm sure wonderful things. The Lurker's Guide gives this 8.62, so that's pretty close to what we are. And Harlan Ellison was got a story credit on this one.
Awesome.
And they did say that he and Harlan talked about the Jakar's Admirer, and that was one of the storylines they worked on together.
Oh,
yes.
cool.
Karen, I believe I sent you a couple of feedback. Yes?
Yep. We got feedback from Nathan and Texas on the Shock.
All right.
So let's start with Texas today. I hope this answers Lou's question about why Lyta was going along with being in that straitjacket. Oh, yeah, the straitjacket. I'm sorry. Aside here. That was the hottest straitjacket ever.
Yes.
I didn't realize it was a straitjacket until I looked a little closer and I saw that her hands were immobilized. And it's if Power Girl had a straitjacket. right? The little cutout in her chest for the
Yeah,
cleavage.
I am so glad you mentioned that because I had the same thing. I did not realize that she was in a straitjacket.
Yeah, so cool. And I read somewhere that Lita, the actress Patricia Tallman, said that they like to call her Babylon Barbie or something to that
Uh,
effect because they liked dressing her up in different outfits. So that's funny. Okay.
yes.
Sorry about that, Texas.
Okay.
I hope this answers Lou's question about why Lita was going along with being in the straitjacket. It made everyone feel more comfortable and she liked it. And why not? How many straitjackets do you know of that have a cleavage cut out in the Pat Tallman? Oh, he says the same thing I just said. Pat Tallman has apparently said the costume department loved putting different outfits on her. She jokingly called herself Babylon Barbie.
Nice. Perfect timing.
Awesome. I have not read this, just so you know.
Hmm.
Anyway, number one, Tessa Holleran is back, and she brings news of an assassination plot against Garibaldi and Lise. Someone doesn't want either of them digging into what Edgars Industries has been getting up to, so they'll just remove them from the equation. Despite some saying it's an episode transplanted from season one or a rehash of the season opener, I rather enjoy this. The assassin is presented as competent and dangerous, and utterly forgettable if you saw him randomly on the street. The perfect face for a hitman, which just makes him even scarier, in my opinion. It also gives Zach a moment to shine, and he handles the entire situation very well. Initially, I thought he was missing the obvious by not connecting the dead security officer to the assassination attempt, but after thinking about it, I like that he doesn't. That would be an assumption with no clear connections, and he doesn't make that leap until he has something more solid to work with. Still, it gives him what he needs to set a trap for this guy, but that can't account for things no one could see coming. In this case, one of Jakar's would-be disciples is trying to get his idol to notice him. However, Jakar is having none of it. This guy embodies all the reasons he's leaving in the first place. He rather reminds me of an entitled fan who expects things to be a certain way and then throws a fit if it doesn't go the way he thinks it should. Most of the time, it doesn't lead to them trying to kill the object of their admiration, though that is unfortunately not unheard of. In any case, he misses Jakar and hits Lise instead. This prompts Garibaldi to drag him down to see Lita to find out who sent him. The guy tries to resist, and I love the look she gives him. It's the look of someone who knows without a doubt that she is the most dangerous person in whatever room she walks into. She gets the info that it's the entire board of directors, though why the assassin would have that exact information isn't made clear. Probably not enough time to have Garibaldi work back from the guy who hired the assassin to the entire board, but I can live with it. The important thing is that Garibaldi, with the help of the new head of covert intelligence, Ms. Holleran, is able to leverage the board into resigning and making sure they crawl into distant hideaways and stay there.
Yes, that would have
Uh,
been a good thing.
there are a few things of interest here. The discussion about the similarities between her and Jakar is interesting. I also like Jakar's counsel on the walls she will bring with her. So often the things that hold us back really come from us. So often we just blame circumstances of other people because it's easier than admitting we just don't want to put forth the effort to change the status quo. Her assumption that Jakar is doing this for his own game is also interesting. It says a lot about how much Lita has just been used by pretty much everyone. That's become her go-to reason why anyone wants to be with her. I love Jakar's response. Then my decision was even more correct than I initially thought. I don't think Jakar will attempt to talk her out of her war. He's been there. He knows what it's like to be under an oppressive regime, but he also knows that acting to defend one's home and people is one thing, acting out of revenge is another, far more costly thing. One that Lita and the people she hopes to free could very well wind up paying the price for. So I think Jakar will ensure that when Lita returns to overthrow the Psi Corps, it will be for the right reasons. There's one final beat to the Lita story. As she and Jakar depart, she looks around while Zach appears behind them and watches them leave. Just this look of missed opportunities. It does make you wonder what might have happened had Lita been cognizant when he started bearing his heart to her that time in the lift. In any case, Michael and Lise have dealt with their adversaries, are now married and off to run a major megacorp, and the gang is slowly going their separate ways. Franklin is next, and then Sheridan and Delenn. But there's next time, and maybe there will be someone still here when they turn the lights off. Okay, so there's our planted seed until Zaveni in Valen's name.
Before you start the next letter, if there is one, I'd like to respond to Texas about the straitjacket. No, it doesn't answer my question about the straitjacket. I get the idea of her making everybody feel safe. But what is a straitjacket going to do to a telepath? So I rest my case.
Yeah,
Well,
that's actually a good point, right? Because it
yeah,
isn't like she needs to move her hands or anything,
right,
right?
right.
Yeah. I guess they were worried she was going to try to leave, and then, but if she could control someone, she could ask them to undo the
Right.
straitjacket. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, I think it just shows how uninformed they are
Yeah,
about what she can do. They
mhm.
underestimate her at the
Absolutely.
very least.
All right.
I think your counterpoint, Lou, valid.
Very much. Good.
Okay, so this is from Nathan. Hi, Nathan.
Hey, Nathan.
First time I watched this episode, I was not happy with it. We've spent half a season on a bad plot, then only a third of the season two-esque, one with poor execution in some parts, and now everything is over and we're doing basically something of a one-off episode with a small personal problem as a focus. Rewatches and rereads make people more okay with things that seemed irritating or inconvenient. The same happened to me here. But another thing that helped was experiencing other shows that didn't have a bigger population spanning perspective at all. Everything was a personal heroic struggle, and big conflict resolutions ended with a personal confrontation with a crucial person at the end of the last episode, and then you get a 2-minute epilogue. Lyta is used as a tool once again, and this once again shows how actual telepaths could solve 90% of the plots if they were not constrained in world building, which is why writers don't want to wrangle them in the first place. Honestly, from an interaction point of view, I wanted more Jakar talking with Lyta and telling her something else personal and profound, or her revealing something else to him. The return of number one is surprising, and I loved the continuity even more. And Mars popping up again after another season of hearing almost nothing about it is just like what happened after Severed Dreams. And it's also another episode where I actually like Garibaldi and his plot, maybe because he's in his element here. With regards, Nathan. Yeah,
Very nice.
fantastic. I would watch a series, like a buddy cop series with Jakar and Lyta.
Yeah, I would have watched that where they go through different visiting in different worlds. Yeah, Luke, did we get any feedback on the YouTube?
We did for episode 19, Wheel of Fire. Texas says after Claudia Christian's leg, Jerry Doyle's arm, and then Mira's pregnancy, half jokingly accused JMS of witchcraft.
That's very sad.
And then Nathan's got some more points about Talita's power, but his basic gist is that her being even more powerful is a bigger jump. And the Battlefield on 5 crew didn't know she had telekinesis. People don't develop it with the exception of Ironheart. FMS Dog says Sheridan showed himself to be bad at managing people, so it was inevitable. He also tries to give Garibaldi the benefit of the doubt, and in retrospect, too much. A credit to the writer to create imperfect heroes. CPM F2112 says Lyta was badly treated during the whole show, really. I know JMS is setting up conditions for the telepath war, but I still hate to see it. And then Joel Miller is still going on about the fact that Londo was not a true villain and whether he's not irredeemable or not. And I, if you're happy with that interpretation of it, and I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but I still come down on the end that it doesn't really make a difference whether or not his intent or his drive was that he was truly evil or not. The fact that he did something evil, the results are still the same, and that his whatever moral quibbles he may have had about it don't really matter because he went ahead and did it anyhow. And hopefully that's the end of that discussion.
If someone wants to reach us, how can they?
as we're winding down the show, you can still get us at this YouTube channel, Lose Reviews, where the Babylon 5 podcast is taking place. We'll be moving to a different home as we're excitedly decided to follow up with a current show, and that being Severance. I know there's 50 million Severance podcasts out there, but we like talking about it as friends, so we're going to go ahead and do it anyhow. That'll be our transition, just like the crew leaving Babylon 5. We're leaving my YouTube channel and moving to our brand new home, the JKL Media Pop Culture Reviews channel. We'll be putting up links to that, and hopefully Babylon 5 fans will join us on this new journey as well. And we look forward to covering not just Severance, but all the other shows and music and comics and everything else that we've decided to cover going forward with our new channel.
Super.
Yes, I'm at Aliveria on social media. My blog is alistuff.com, and there's a bunch of links there that might interest you.
And I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter, aka X, and Jesse Jackson on Facebook. Looking forward to wrapping up our Babylon 5 discussion. The plan is next week we are going to do Object at Rest. The following, we will do Sleeping in Light, which is the final episode of the series. And then we will wrap it up with the animated movie that came out just recently. And we've decided at this point we may later go back and look at Crusade or some of the movies, but at this point I think we've going to wrap up the Babylon 5 universe. And as Lou said, we're going to move to Severance and also going forward some other things. And we hope everyone will move forward to the new YouTube channel. All right, there we go. All right, 2 episodes left. And I just recently reviewed the questions and thoughts on you guys had given it before we started 5. And so we'll cover that when we discuss Sleeping in Light. And as I said, you guys have mentioned a couple of things that I think that when they come clear, you go, oh, yeah, that's what we were talking about. For now, thank you, Lou. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, listeners. We hope your new year is off to a great start, and we'll be back next week. Goodbye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And scene.